BlackRock is currently intentionally suppressing the Bitcoin price so that it doesn't rise above $1. These are the explosive accusations from Robert Kiyosaki. Let's take a look at what's behind this. Also, it seems that Bitcoin is now being banned in Cambodia. Super intense. We're going to look at why the next country is banning Bitcoin and whether such a ban can even be enforced. Additionally, there's now a TV spot where the Russian finance minister talks about Bitcoin and why Russia is opening up to it. It's really hot stuff that's going on here. First, let's take a look at Robert Kiyosaki, who is super bullish on Bitcoin. Just 2 days ago, he said that you can get rich with just one Satoshi. So, just one Satoshi is enough to get rich. He probably exaggerated that. But now he's saying something else interesting here. He says here that BlackRock is pushing the Bitcoin price down so that the whales can keep buying Bitcoin. That's also an accusation that Tom Lee made not too long ago. He said that it's not just the whales buying Bitcoin, but that there are big players, institutional players. I'm not sure if they're all whales or if some of them aren't, but definitely the institutional players, like the exchanges, can better position themselves here. That's why the Bitcoin prices are being suppressed. Also, the exchanges can better position themselves here. That's why the Bitcoin prices are being suppressed. Here, Robert Kiyosaki is clearly saying, no, BlackRock and other whales want to suppress the Bitcoin price, keep it artificially low so that the weak hands get shaken out and the big players can buy back in at cheaper prices. What he is saying here is exactly that Larry Fink sells Bitcoin to Vivek Wand, that is, Vivek Ramaswamy Wand, Larry Fink for BlackRock, using that BlackRock is a Marxist. I'm not sure what he meant by that. Probably that BlackRock, it seems, is not playing by the rules of the free market, but rather has some sort of government support or something like that in some way. Vivek warned that Fink and BlackRock are indeed shareholder capitalists, not stakeholder capitalists. Shareholder capitalists are in fact Marxists like Klaus Schwab, who said, "One day you will own nothing and be happy." I love Bitcoin in my own wallet, so in self-custody. That's what he means by that. I wouldn't trust Bitcoin in BlackRock ETFs. BlackRock is pushing down the Bitcoin price so that the whales can buy Bitcoin for under $1,000. I'm going to keep buying more Bitcoins because the Bitcoin price is going up. I expect that Bitcoin will rise to $1,000 by 2025. So, there are a lot of really exciting points here. First of all, he's very bullish here. He's expecting it to hit $1,000. This cycle would basically run similarly to the past cycles. Furthermore, here again the accusation against BlackRock that BlackRock really has an interest in keeping Bitcoin prices low. That's why he also says here that BlackRock is made up of Marxists, meaning people who have really bad incentives. He's also clearly saying, hey folks, get your Bitcoins off the exchanges, take your Bitcoin out of the Bitcoin ETFs. Rob, go away. I was talking to some people here in El Salvador earlier, and we said, hey, there really aren't any major problems as long as you keep your Bitcoin in self-custody. But if you have it in an ETF, you could potentially have your Bitcoin sitting in a Ponzi scheme. So it's clear, take your Bitcoin out, and it's best to put it on a Trezor hardware wallet. But if you have it in an ETF, you could potentially have your Bitcoin sitting in a Ponzi scheme. And that's why it's clear. Take your Bitcoin out, and it's best to put it on a Trezor hardware wallet. I'm putting a link down below for a Trezor hardware wallet. Super easy, super simple to use. Here you really have Bitcoin in your own wallet, just like Robert Kiyosaki says. With the code bitcoinhotel, you can also get a discount of up to 10% when buying one of these hardware wallets. Because Robert Kiyosaki clearly says, I don't trust BlackRock, and that's a valid point he's making. By the way, just a quick side note. Last time I calculated that you need an average of 6 Satoshis per day to have more than the average person. If we distribute 450 Bitcoin per day and have 8 billion people, I actually misspoke in my last video when I said that you need 6 Bitcoin. That's obviously not true. A few people didn't get it in the comments, but most folks understood that I wasn't talking about 6 Bitcoin, but rather 6 Satoshis. And then we have a real bombshell news here, and that's Cambodia. I think I accidentally said Cambodia before, but I meant Cambodia here. They are now officially banning Bitcoin here. Stablecoins are still allowed, but Bitcoin is not allowed because it's decentralized. And that's the story you keep hearing, that Bitcoin is being banned, that it's being regulated, that they want to shut it down altogether because all these governments have a chronic problem when they can't restrict something, when they can't monitor it, when they can't censor it, when they can't shut it down, and when they have no means to intervene. And this really puts nation states, big institutions, big banks, and so on into a panic because with Bitcoin, you can't just exclude someone, you can't just shut down the network, and you can't inflate things to your own advantage and all that kind of stuff. None of that is possible. And that really causes nation states, big institutions, big banks, and so on, it really causes panic here. Because with Bitcoin, you can't just exclude anyone, you can't just shut down the network, you can't just inflate people for your own benefit and things like that. None of this is really possible here. And that's why Cambodia is now taking massive measures. And the report from Swan clearly states that Cambodia has officially banned Bitcoin. I mean, you can't really ban Bitcoin, you can only exclude yourself from the Bitcoin network. You can't ban math, you can't ban language. Bitcoin is nothing more than math, language, cryptography. It's absolute nonsense. It's just like saying we're banning fire now or we're banning cars or something like that, because anyone can use the technology of fire, the technology of cars, and can design their own car or their own lighter or something like that. And the same is true of Bitcoin. In theory, anyone can use the open source network, anyone can build a wallet from it, anyone can build other Bitcoin products or something like that from it. It's an open source code, it's a decentralized network, and anyone can jump in and out as they please. So it's absolute nonsense to ban something like that. Max Kaiser says here that Cambodia will be annexed by a regional Bitcoin power within 5 years. As with gunpowder, either they take it on board or they are captured by someone who has it. And that is ultimately the comparison that he makes here, that Cephii Dynamis always makes 2001, that Bitcoin is like gunpowder. So Bitcoin isn't optional. You can say, okay, hey, I'm not getting into gunpowder, I don't want any part of that. I'd rather fight with a sword. I'd rather fight with my fists. I want to do it the old school way. You can do that, but then other countries will come in, like the US, and they'll roll in with tanks, they'll come with bazookas, machine guns, and whatever else while you're standing there with your machete trying to defend yourself. And what happens then? America will steamroll you, the Americans will roll right over you, and then they'll force you into using gunpowder. Because sooner or later, you have to adapt to American culture, so to speak. America will overrun you, the Americans will overrun you, and then they will force you to use gunpowder. Because sooner or later, you have to adapt to American culture, so to speak. If you want to survive, you have to somehow embrace gunpowder, at least when you look at it from a cross-cultural perspective. And that's why you don't stand a chance. Either you use Bitcoin or you're going to be a massive loser and, in the worst-case scenario, you'll even die. But dying on an economic level means you're going to end up impoverished. I once asked Prince Philip of Serbia what advice he could give about nation-states, and he actually said, adopt or have fun staying poor. So those are your two options. You can either adapt or you're just going to end up broke. So those are your two options. You can either adapt or you're just going to end up broke. There's no other option. And Cephii Dynamis would say here, adopt or die. So either you adapt or you're going to die because the Americans will roll over you with their big, bad weapons or whatever. That comparison might sound really fatalistic, but it's actually very accurate. And that's how it will go for every company, every individual, every country that shuts itself off from Bitcoin. They'll just wake up in 5 years and realize, oh crap, the other countries are so far ahead now, they have such a huge competitive advantage, and I'm stuck in my crappy country. I'm basically here in relation to, for example, the country that has embraced Bitcoin will be massively impoverished, and then you'll just be stuck both technologically and monetarily. 21. There was also a report here earlier that the Rumble stock has now risen by 100.3% since Rumble introduced the Bitcoin strategy here. And Rumble has only had this Bitcoin strategy for about a month, 2 or 3 months or so. And it's not even an ultra-aggressive one, but more of a slightly aggressive Bitcoin strategy. And you can really see what happens when a company adopts a Bitcoin strategy. Suddenly, the stock just skyrockets. MicroStrategy, the best performing stock in the USA. Then we have, for example, other stocks like, for example, Mara, or we have E.G, Semler Scientific, DeFi Technologies, and those stocks are soaring. The Bitcoin narrative is enough to pump these stocks. If they leverage and implement a Bitcoin treasury strategy, it's really soaring. It seemed legal, then banned in 10 regions, and 3 days ago, Russia's finance minister said, we're now using Bitcoin for trade. And if they leverage that and implement a Bitcoin treasury strategy, then it's really going to the moon. And I'm sure you all heard about what's been going on with Russia. Seemed like it was legal again. Then it was briefly banned in 10 regions. And just 3 days ago, we got the news that the finance minister of Russia said, hey, we're now using Bitcoin for international trade.
And now there's actually a fascinating TV clip that has recently surfaced, capturing a moment where the Russian finance minister, a key figure in the country's economic landscape, talks about Bitcoin in a way that has never been heard before. Check it out. It's really explosive and groundbreaking what he's saying. Majna.
Rashetov, from the financial, experimental power regime, a significant entity in financial innovation, clearly confirms it in his own words. This is particularly noteworthy because it has always been so unclear and shrouded in mystery until now, leaving many in the financial world speculating.
The clip is not just a simple statement, but a profound revelation that could potentially reshape the understanding of Bitcoin's role in global finance.
There were some articles, some newspapers that said from Russia, yeah, this is going to be used for trade, but now you can really see it. Black and white, or actually in color, to be honest, showing that Russia is using Bitcoin for international trade. It's also mentioned here that the regulations will probably be loosened, and it's already being used. And that's what I've said before. If it's being used for trade, it means that Russia must have massive Bitcoin holdings. International trade means, for example, with China or something like that, that large amounts are being moved back and forth so that maybe 500 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin are being moved here. Maybe oil is being traded against Bitcoin, or maybe iron is being traded against Bitcoin, gold against Bitcoin. I don't know what kind of commodities they are trading. But in any case, Bitcoin is being used here as a settlement layer. And now it's interesting. This is an experimental process that's happening here. It's being described as an experimental process, and now we'll see if it catches on or not, if it works well or if it doesn't. I actually had a situation earlier where a woman from El Salvador asked me, hey, how do I get money from Germany to El Salvador? And then I say, yeah, Bitcoin. And she says, yeah, but fiat, because Bitcoin isn't really working here. I say, no fiat, just Bitcoin, because if you want to send money across borders, you have to use Bitcoin. Because if you do it with fiat, I tried to explain this too. First of all, you pay insane fees, and second, it takes forever. I just told her to send it over using Lightning, swap it back and forth, and then if she really needs the fiat money here, she can exchange it back to fiat, whatever. And that's exactly how Russia might do it. Russia might not necessarily use Bitcoin as a treasury asset, but rather just as a settlement asset, meaning they might send it, for example. And that's exactly how Russia might do it. Russia might use Bitcoin for settlement, not treasury. They send Bitcoin to China, exchange to Chinese currency, or vice versa. Bitcoin is an intermediary, exchanged into the Chinese currency or the other way around. Chinese send the Bitcoin to Russia, and Russia then exchanges the Bitcoin back into the local currency. That means Bitcoin is basically just being used as an intermediary. What all the Ripple folks always say about what Ripple can do so well, Bitcoin has actually been able to do for a long time. It can provide the interbank settlement layer, as well as the interbank layer where, for example, banks simply E.G. Let's say you send 1 billion from, I don't know, Russia to Cambodia or something like that, and then at the border, the local asset is always swapped into Bitcoin and back again. So the Bitcoins are actually being sent, but the recipient immediately uses those Bitcoins to exchange them into the currency they actually want. Bitcoin is better. Fakhr from El Salvador wanted dollars. She didn't save with Bitcoin. Just like Fakhr here from El Salvador, she really wanted dollars because she wanted to buy something with them. I don't know. She just didn't get that you can save with Bitcoin, or to be fair, maybe she did understand but just didn't have the liquidity to set it aside, so she ends up swapping it back into dollars. But in doing so, she saved herself a couple of things, or actually 3 things. First, a ton of stress. Second, long wait times. And third, transaction fees. But she saved herself a couple of things, or actually 3 things. First, a ton of stress. Second, long wait times. And third, transaction fees. That's why Bitcoin is absolutely superior here, maybe not yet for supermarket purchases, like when you're buying fruits for €2, but definitely for things like cross-border payments, especially when it comes to moving money into countries with a tough banking infrastructure and stuff like that. Or even for really large amounts, significant sums, when nation-states use Bitcoin as a settlement layer. It's just absolutely crazy. Or even for really large amounts, significant sums, when nation-states use Bitcoin as a settlement layer. So absolutely crazy. And if you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin. The easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. For beginners, for pros, it doesn't matter. Anyone can buy Bitcoin, even your grandma. With the code bitcoinhotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin here. I'm signing off here from El Salvador. Kisawana.